Hello everybody, we're here doing Mireya's memory video. I am here with Cadence today. Cadence is our oldest daughter and she was 12 years old when Mireya passed, and today we're going to talk a little bit about music and Cadence's grief journey and some specific things that we've been through that we've learned that are helpful. And the first thing I want to talk about is just music and how that's played a part in our grief journey. Cadence is a very musical person. She loves to play instruments and she loves to sing. And music has been a really powerful healing tool for her and really for our whole family. One of the music memories that I have of Mireya is at Primary Children's Hospital. One of the times I was able to hold her, there was a woman that came around with her guitar and she was kind of playing music as we were holding and talking to her, and she asked me, is there a specific song that you would like to sing to her? And I thought about it for a minute, and I thought, you know, as a mom that has a baby and I only have a limited amount of time to be with her, it was really important to me to be able to share the gospel with Mireya. And the song that I sang to her was How Deep the Father's Love for Us. And I felt like that song so beautifully encompasses the gospel truth about Jesus. And so I sang that song to her through tears. And I had Samantha Tinky sing it at her funeral as a kind of a memory of that special time I spent with Mireya, and it was really a blessing to my heart. And so Cadence, I want you to talk about some songs that have encouraged you and what specific truths in those songs touched your heart.
One of them is a song and it's called You Are Beloved. It's by someone named Jordan Feliz.
Mm-hmm.
And that song was really encouraging to me because I've always had so many questions that, like, I've never really cared enough to ask.
Mm-hmm.
And when Mireya died and the song, like the lyrics in the song had full of questions, is the first line, and that just like very first pushed me to start asking these questions that I had.
Mm-hmm.
And also, after Mireya died, I felt like it was my fault. And because I wasn't in like a really strong commitment with Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And so I felt like it was my fault. And so I just prayed and I said, Jesus, why? Why are you letting this happen to me? So after she died, I started asking these questions and getting answers. I felt a lot better and my commitment with Jesus has gotten a lot stronger.
Great. So I remember, Cadence, when we came home and you telling me that first time that you felt like it was your fault because you felt like you had had kind of a superficial relationship up to that point with the Lord. And then when that happened, you felt like that was his way of kind of dealing with that superficiality in your life.
Yeah.
And I think that I don't think that it's your fault. I would not say it's your fault. And you know, we've talked about that before, but God can use trials to deal with problems in our lives, right?
I agree.
So it's been a blessing to you and your walk, and it has been to me and mine too, which is one of the kind of weird things about grief, is that it takes you to that really hard place, but at the same time it's like you have the flip side blessing,
right,
of what you learn and how you grow and all of those amazing things. And it kind of reminds me of what we were talking about right before the video when you were saying that grief is kind of like a cold, dark place, like a lonely season. And I was reminding you of that verse that says there's a season for everything. And sometimes grief it's cold and dark and lonely. But you have to remember that spring comes after the winter, and just like we have that spring to look forward to when it's cold in the wintertime, it's the same with grief. You walk through that cold, dark, lonely place with knowing that there's going to be spring again, right? And so the next thing that, you had one other song, right? What was your other song?
It was It's Okay to Cry by Ryan Stevenson.
Okay.
And that one was really encouraging because it helped me realize that things happen for a reason and God has a purpose for everything. He has plans and we don't know them, and we just need to trust him. And I've always hated crying, and I hate it when other people cry. So before I heard this song, I remember my little sisters wanted you to play baby dolls, and you just started crying, and I got really offended. And then like there was other times when like Chloe would come up and say like, I'm sorry Mireia died, I feel bad, and I was like, Chloe. And like when you would cry, I'd get really defensive and aggravated that they wouldn't stop talking about it, so I wouldn't ask you questions about Mireia or talk to you about Mireia, and it made me feel harder and I've also noticed that crying affects my behavior in a positive way.
Yeah. So with Mireia, I know at first I was feeling that too, like nobody felt like they could talk about it or ask questions about it. But how have you felt later when we've kind of been able to process more? How does it make you feel when you talk about her, when you hear stories about her, or when you remember things about her? Does it help, or is it still something that's hard?
It is hard to talk about that, but I feel really joyful and sad at the same time, because it's like I'm really sad that I don't have her, but I'm really happy to find out everything I can about her and know her as well as I can.
I feel the same way. It's really hard for me to talk about her. It's really hard for me to share memories about her, but it's such a blessing, and I feel joy to be able to let those things come out. It really helps with the grief, with the sadness.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I agree with that. So when your dad and I were at Primary Children's Hospital, you guys didn't ever see us much. But after Mireia passed away, we came home, and me and your dad had kind of talked to each other about how are we going to tell the kids that she passed away, and your dad said, let me handle it. He had an idea about a way that wouldn't be as hard as just kind of telling you guys, which was the way I was going to do it.
It's just explicitly telling us would be really dramatic.
Maybe, yeah. So your dad felt like he wanted to do it in a more subtle way. So I want you to talk about your memory of that.
Well, I remember he said that like there was a raindrop and it fell from the sky and through like a very thorny path and really hard times it reached the ground and it was like absorbed and taken up back to heaven. He was about halfway through the story and I like started crying and said, I know exactly what this story means. One thing that triggered that in my mind was that you and Dad were crying, and another thing was that you came home. Where's the baby?
Yeah.
Like you were home, and I said, and Eli said, are you going back to the hospital, or are you staying here? And you said, we're staying here. And there was no baby, so I was like, okay, this is kind of weird. So that's one thing that triggered it in my mind.
So what do you feel about that? Like, tell me, do you think the story, like, how did the story affect you? Would you have preferred to just have been told, or is that a sweet memory in your heart? And
it's a really sweet memory. I think it would have been a lot harder.
I agree.
If she died, if you just explicitly told us Mireia died. And I mean, And that would probably be a lot harder on the kids too, because they don't understand much about those kind of things.
Yeah. Okay. So when Mireya was born, COVID-19 was still a big deal. And she was in the infant NICU up at Primary Children's Hospital, and they weren't allowing any visitors. So none of you guys were able to see her. But there were a lot of things that people did to try to help you connect with her and feel like a bond, like she was part of you, right? And so I want you to kind of share what things were really effective for you to help you feel like you were part of her, she was part of you.
One thing that was that when you guys were at the hospital, I was having a really hard time just knowing that, like, my sister and my parents are gone. They've been gone for a while, and I don't know, like, how to be in contact with anyone. And I felt really alone because I was, like, left in the dark. I didn't know hardly anything about anything. There were lots of people in the church that just said, like, here, give me your grandma's phone number and you should call me, connect with me, and we can talk, or if you want me to take you somewhere, I can come get you, and we can, like, go have lunch and talk or something. And it really did help. I called a few people and got in contact, and that really helped me, and it made me feel more connected to Mireya and you guys. And also, when I found out she was a girl, because she was a mystery baby, so we didn't know, and I was like, another sister! So blessed with girls!
Yeah.
And when the hospital sent the baby ring, I was like, this ring is so tiny it won't even fit on my pinky. If it fits on her big old fat thumb, then it can't even fit on my pinky.
Yeah.
What sweet hands. The necklace and all of the things with her feet and handprint or mark really have been really touching to me, just knowing, like, she's my sister, she was a live human being, and I mean, I feel like those handprints and footprints are like hands and feet in this world, and that was really encouraging.
They also, one of the things that the hospital did for you guys was they set up a live video feed where you could get in on, like, Grandma's phone and watch her. How did you feel about that?
In fact, one of my favorite memories was from watching on the camera. It was when you and Dad were bathing her with the little wipes, and I could see her, like, plainly see her, like, her eyes, her face, her hair, so much hair, and her beautiful. She was beautiful.
Yeah.
And
so you got to see a little bit of her personality, like, in the video feed. I think it's amazing. I've talked about a little bit before how much personality you can see, even, you know, from a baby that's in that situation, you know.
I bet she would have been a really bright child.
Yeah, she was sweet.
Bright and happy.
So, the last thing I want to talk about, Cadence, is just some of, like, the ways that kids typically cope with grief, things that families typically struggle with when a loved one passes away and they have kids. And then we're going to talk specifically about some of the things that you've done or that we've helped you with, so that people can get an idea, you know, for their own kids that might be struggling in a similar way. So kids generally cope with grief in a variety of different ways, and we've even seen that with our 4 kids that we still have. There's been such a variety of methods and issues that have come out of the grief journey. Like, all of our kids have been so different, and the things that work for them have been very different. So some general ones that kids usually have to one degree or another is acting out So when kids lose someone that's very close to them, they typically act out in either anger, or it could be violence, or it could just be, in ways that aren't normal for them. Like maybe a kid is really being disrespectful, whereas usually not so much. And so just behavior that's sporadic and new. And the reason why kids act out is because they need an outlet. They have to have a place for all of the grief to go, and they have to be able to process it in some way. And so one of the big things for kids is finding outlets and supporting those outlets, and then when the children take the outlet, to celebrate that with them. Relive those memories with them, if you will, and let them kind of savor those memories and those moments in a safe place. Another common thing that you'll deal with is internalizing. Well, Cadence did internalize a little bit. The one that really internalized on us was Eli, and I'll talk more specifically about strategies when I do his video for that. But like Cadence said, when she was first internalizing, what helped her was just crying, making a way for that emotion to come out somehow. And so for a lot of kids, it just means reminding them that it's okay to cry. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to share whatever is on your mind and heart with me. You don't have to be afraid of how I'm going to react. One thing specifically to do with grief is that people are thinking and feeling things that they wouldn't normally say or feel. And so there has to be a safe place for them to be able to say things that normally you may address in a different way. And you got to have a little bit more like patience and maybe like understanding about letting them communicate things that might otherwise not be appropriate to say. And even for adults, I've experienced it myself where I've had to say things that were not okay to say, but just getting it out was super effective for my healing. Like it was just something I needed to say and have heard. And being able to kind of hear those things and then let them go and not make a big deal out of them is a good grief tactic. Another thing is withdrawing. Kids will withdraw and they'll avoid you. And this is one you kind of have to be careful with, because withdrawing can be good as long as the kids are processing okay. So if they want some time and space alone, like Cadence was my person that kind of withdrew a lot. And as long as she was down there using an outlet to process her grief, I was fine with that. Withdrawing and avoiding is not okay if they're not coping. So the key with avoidance and withdrawing is that you have to make sure that your kids are coping somehow. And so I want to talk a little bit about those coping strategies that Cadence has used. So the first thing I'm going to kind of recap is create a safe environment. Create a place where it's okay for kids to share whatever they need to say, where it's safe to cry, where it's safe to have outlets where they can kind of process emotion and memory and thought. And this is going to look different for every kid, kind of like I already said. So one thing that's been helpful for all of our kids in a more general sense is that we've tried to find enjoyable outlets where they can process emotionally. Now with Cadence loves to write. She loves music, and she also loves to draw. And so for her, it's been about using those things that she loves and enjoys to be able to process all of the grief and emotion and questions, like she said. And so one of the things that Cadence has done is she wrote Mireia a letter, which I'm going to have her share. She also wrote a poem about Mireia, and I'm going to have her read that as well. And she drew a picture of herself, and she's got tears in her eyes and Mireia in her arms. And I'm going to post pictures of that in the blog with the video. And so I'm going to have her share those. And I'm also going to post the picture of her page in Mireya's memory book. And the last thing I want to mention before I have her share is this book that I gave her. It's called Grieving the Child I Never Knew. And I have a copy of this. It's a journaling book. It gives you assignments to kind of write about different things. And I gave her this because she loves to write. This is typically for mothers. But because she's a teenager and she's a girl, and her heart, you know, she's looking forward to that day when she is a mother, I gave her a copy of this as well to work through, just to give her some writing prompts and things to work through. So I'm going to go ahead and have her share, and then we'll tie up.
Can I do the picture and show it too?
No, just read your letter and then read your poem, and I'm going to post the picture in a different section, so.
Okay, so here's the poem. I waited so long till you were finally here, and to us all you were so dear. Days after came a time when we had to part, but there's a place in me I'll never leave. I'll always hold you close at heart, until I can hold you in heaven above. For you I'll always have a special love.
Okay.
Dear Mireya, I don't even know where to start, and I don't know if you'll ever get to read this, but I just want to say I never even got to touch your precious little hand. Though I'm weeping inside, I'm rejoicing as well. Not that I ever got to see you, but that you had never had to see this dark world. I'm your eldest sibling. My name is Cadence. But then you have a brother, Eli, another sister, Chloe, and one more sister, Kinsley. I deeply love and miss you. Sincerely, Cadence.
Okay, so I want you to talk, Cadence, a little bit about how writing and drawing and have helped you, like, kind of process your grief.
Well, I feel like writing has always been a huge part of me.
Mm-hmm.
I've always loved writing, whether it's a narrative or a poem or just a grocery list. I like to write. I love expressing feelings through pencil and paper, because it really seems to help me when I can express my emotions, feelings, and words without saying them.
Okay.
And also drawing helps me do the same thing, but with picture instead of words. Okay. It helps me to express emotion and feeling.
Mm-hmm. So with Cadence, I just want to talk a little bit about like a typical interaction and how it would work. So usually what would happen with Cadence is, like she said, she would start to struggle. Things would kind of build up inside. There would be a tension there. And then it would get to a point where we would have some kind of like explosion. And generally after that, she would come to me and tell me, you know, I miss Mireya. I need a hug or something like that. And at that point, I would encourage her to go down and write or draw a picture or use one of the outlets to kind of process what she was experiencing. And then typically after she would do that, she was fine again. And we would kind of go through that cycle. The one thing that I do want to mention that I was very adamant about with Cadence is that I was really afraid that we would get caught in this place where she would be experiencing her grief. She would get to that point where there was an issue, and then she would realize, hey, I can use this as an excuse for my behavior. And so one rule that I made for myself as a parent is I told our kids, discipline sticks. Like, if you are struggling, if you're having a hard time and you get in trouble for behavior, you are going to have whatever discipline is given to you. And it's not going to be removed. This is not going to be used as an excuse for bad behavior. While at the same time letting them know it's okay to talk to me, it's okay to need a hug or cry or whatever you need. You know, we're fine with meeting you there and helping you guys through it, but it's just not going to be used as an excuse. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And I think with that, we'll go ahead and end this video. And thank you, Cadence, for sharing. And I hope you guys found some encouragement or helpful information here. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.